I worked the night shift at a medium-sized hotel just off the interstate, the kind of place people only stop at because they're exhausted or out of options. Online, the lobby looks nicer than it really is. Faded carpet, scratched counters, and a giant ceramic vase guests bump into at least once a week. But at night, the place gets quiet. Too quiet sometimes. The kind of silence that makes you aware of your own breathing. Normally, that stillness is comforting. But that night, it felt wrong from the start. I've worked overnights long enough to know every pattern this building has. Who smokes outside at 1 a.m., which doors make the loudest click, which cameras lag for half a second. I even know the exact moment my stomach starts growling, around 1:40 a.m. So when something breaks the routine, I notice immediately. This happened about 2 weeks ago. We were at roughly 60% occupancy, most guests already in their rooms. The PMS screen was quiet. No check-ins, no flags. I was hungry, so before heading to the storage room, I did what I always do. I slid the spare key drawer shut, turned the metal lock, tugged to make sure it was secure. The master key card and all backups were inside, and the key stayed clipped to my lanyard. With everything locked up, I started walking toward the back to find something to eat. Halfway there, something outside caught my eye, and that's when the night stopped feeling normal. Through the glass wall, under the valet lights, a man was pacing along the curb. Not fast, not slow, just pacing, in a perfectly controlled rhythm. He wasn't on his phone. He wasn't waiting for anyone. He traced slow circles like he was counting steps. Even with a few guests in the lobby, he didn't look at any of them. Something about his posture looked rehearsed, like he was trying to mimic being normal, but didn't fully understand how. His hooded jacket hung too heavy for the weather. One hand was buried deep in his pocket. The other hung completely still. Then, for a split second, he lifted his face, and his eyes locked directly onto the lobby. Onto me. I tried to shake it off. Maybe he was a guest, stressed, or high. But my instincts were screaming something else. I stepped behind the counter just as the front doors slid open. He walked straight toward me, slow, overly controlled steps. His voice was low and flat when he spoke. He asked for directions to a lookout point 20 minutes away, but he didn't seem to care about the answer. His eyes weren't on me. They kept drifting toward the drawer I had locked less than a minute earlier. And the key to that drawer was in my pocket. That was the first real spike of fear. I started giving the directions anyway, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't react. Then he leaned in slightly, and that faint chemical smell hit me. Not cologne, not alcohol, something sharp and artificial, like a medical solvent. My throat tightened instantly. He asked the same question again, slower this time. That's when I glanced at the security monitor behind him, and froze. In the corner of the feed, just outside the doors, another man was waiting. My pulse jumped. My palms went wet. When I looked back at the man in front of me, he was already watching my reaction. And then everything happened fast. The chemical smell grew stronger. My vision blurred at the edges. Heat rushed up my face. My knees weakened. I tried to step back, but the floor felt like it was tilting. I knew I was going down. And he didn't move. He didn't reach out. He didn't blink. Through the fading of my vision, I saw the second man start walking toward the entrance. Panic shot through my chest. I needed to make noise. Anything loud. My hand slid blindly across the counter until it hit the base of the giant ceramic vase. I pulled it down with me as I fell. The shattering sound exploded through the lobby, and right as it hit, my vision snapped to black. I woke up on the floor with bright lights overhead. A paramedic was checking my pulse. 2 co-workers were kneeling beside me. Police were clearing out guests and reviewing camera feeds. My head felt full of static. A police officer crouched down and asked what happened. I told him everything. The pacing man, the smell, the dizziness, the second man outside. He listened carefully. Then he asked, "You locked the drawer before walking away, right?" I nodded. Instinctively, my hand went to my pocket. The key was still clipped to my lanyard. The officer exhaled slowly. "That drawer was their goal," he said. "Not the guests, not the rooms. They wanted the master keycard." "The cameras show both men heading straight for your counter," he continued. My chest tightened. "The second you fell, one of them started coming around the desk to grab your keys. When the vase shattered, it startled them. They ran out the side entrance. I took the rest of the night off, and I haven't worked a full overnight since." The hotel replaced the side door lock, upgraded the cameras, added more lighting. But even with all that, something still feels wrong whenever I walk past that drawer. And the only thing that stopped them was that I locked it minutes before they walked in, and that I hit the floor loud enough for someone to hear. I keep thinking about how close they were, and how easily the night could have gone differently. This happened about 3 years ago, when I was 16. My mom and I were driving to the next town to meet my dad and little sister for a late Sunday breakfast. It wasn't far, 40 minutes maybe. But we left early, and my mom wanted to stop for gas before getting back on the main road. I had my headphones on, listening to a true crime podcast called Midnight Crimes, an episode about people going missing at highway rest stops. Funny timing, because we were literally pulling into one. My mom was talking, but the podcast made her voice nothing but background noise. We pulled into this small, quiet gas station. I told her I'd stretch my legs and look around inside. She said something. Probably "don't take too long," but the audio drowned it out. I nodded and stepped out. When I walked into the convenience store, everything looked normal enough. Bright lights, clean floors, rows of snacks and drinks, a coffee machine bubbling quietly in the corner. The cashier, an older man with reading glasses, was scrolling on his phone behind the counter. It all felt totally ordinary, the kind of place you barely notice. I drifted through the aisles, not looking for anything. That's when I noticed a guy near the refrigerator section. He wasn't doing anything strange and just holding a bottle of water. But there was this small twinge in my gut, that feeling when someone looks at you a bit too long. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just enough to make me step out of his line of sight. Anyone who's ever been somewhere unfamiliar and suddenly becomes aware of someone's eyes on them knows that feeling. I moved to the next aisle, but the discomfort stuck. Every time I shifted or looked up, he seemed just a little too aware of where I was. Not staring, just watching. Or maybe I was imagining it. I wasn't scared, just uncomfortable. Still, I didn't want to walk outside immediately. That meant passing right next to him. But I also didn't want to pretend to shop forever. So, for some reason, and it still feels weird, I thought it'd be easier to duck into the bathroom for a minute. I told myself I kinda needed to pee anyway, and that if I disappeared for a bit, he'd lose interest, grab his water, and leave. At the time, it made sense. Now, I have no idea why that was my instinct instead of going back to my mom. I walked toward the back hallway. The bathroom sign was crooked, pointing toward 2 doors. I picked the closest one and pushed it open. Immediately, I knew I'd made a mistake. It wasn't a bathroom. The air was stale and humid, like there was no ventilation. A small cot sat in the corner with a blanket thrown over it. A shelf held random personal items, a half-empty cologne bottle, a jacket, shoes on the floor. The overhead light buzzed faintly. I froze. It felt wrong to be in there, like I'd stepped into a private room I absolutely shouldn't see. Before I could slip back out, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My stomach dropped. I closed the door, locked it. My hands were already shaking. I tried calling my mom. The call wouldn't connect. Tried again. Nothing. Texts wouldn't send either. It felt like the phone was trapped in the same dead zone I was. The longer I stood there, the more real the isolation felt. Then the doorknob turned. Soft at first, like someone was gently testing if it was locked. Then again, harder, like someone determined to get inside. My entire body went rigid. I backed into the corner, trying to keep my breathing quiet. Anyone who's ever been trapped somewhere they shouldn't be knows how your mind twists every sound into a threat. The handle stopped. Silence filled the doorway. Then footsteps, walking away. Slow. Too slow. Almost deliberate, like they wanted me to believe they left. Something felt wrong. I lowered my eyes to the gap under the door. There were feet there, motionless, facing the door. He hadn't left. He was waiting, just standing there, silent, patient. My whole body locked up again. I stared at those shoes, terrified they'd suddenly turn toward me. Time stretched, seconds feeling like minutes. Every creak in the building made me flinch. My legs were going numb, but I didn't move. I couldn't. Eventually, the feet shifted, a small rotation. Then they finally turned away. A moment later, the footsteps returned, fading down the hallway this time. But I didn't trust it, not even a little. He had already faked leaving once. What if he was just out of sight, waiting for the sound of the lock? I stayed in that tiny room for almost 30 minutes, too scared to take a chance, too scared to imagine what I'd see if I opened the door too soon. Finally, I worked up the nerve. I unlocked the door slowly and cracked it open. The hallway was empty. I stepped out and immediately heard someone yelling my name. My mom. Her voice was shaking. She was crying, asking customers if they'd seen me. She told me she'd been calling my phone over and over, and when I didn't answer, she panicked and started yelling for help. The cashier looked confused. He said he hadn't seen me at all, not walking toward the hallway, not in the aisles, nothing. Like I'd just vanished. Later, when he checked the cameras, he said the footage showed me walking toward the back hallway and a man following a few seconds later. But it never showed him leaving. He just disappeared from the frame, like he'd melted into the building. To this day, I don't know if the man inside the store was the same one standing outside the door. I don't know if he followed me because I walked into the wrong room, or if he'd been planning something long before I noticed him. And I still think about that podcast episode. The one about people disappearing at highway rest stops. Because for 30 minutes in that little room, I couldn't stop wondering if I was about to become one of those stories. This happened last year, right at the beginning of winter. I was 26, working nights at a bar just off the state highway. A dim, loud sports bar with neon lights older than half our customers. Nobody bragged about going there, but the tips kept me longer than I planned. That night, I was closing alone. Normally, there were 2 of us, but my coworker left early because of a family emergency. I didn't mind. I'd closed the place 100 times. But something about that night felt heavier than usual. Colder. Quieter. Around 2:35 a.m., I shut off the last lights, grabbed my jacket, and stepped out the back door. The bar sits next to a strip of small shops that close early, so once we lock up, the whole area becomes a big, empty, dark space. Half the overhead lights don't work, the others flicker. I had parked farther out than usual. The second the cold air hit my face, I regretted it. I was heading toward my car when someone slammed their palm against the window from the outside. I jumped so hard I hit the side with my elbow. When I turned, I saw her, mid-20s maybe, pressed up against my window. Makeup streaked, breathing erratic, eyes darting over her shoulder like someone was seconds away from grabbing her. "Please," she gasped. "Please let me in." He followed me. "He's coming." Her voice cracked like she'd been crying for hours. Not drunk, not confused, just terrified. I cracked my window an inch. "Who's following you?" I asked. But she didn't answer. She didn't even look at me. She grabbed the handle and yanked. The door was locked. "Please," she begged. "I swear he's coming. He's already here." Against every instinct I had, and I still can't explain why, I unlocked the door. She jumped inside and slammed the lock button down. For a moment, I thought nothing of it. Maybe she feared someone would run up any second. But then her breathing changed. Her crying stopped. Her posture shifted, like she wasn't terrified anymore, like she was just waiting. And then she turned her head slowly, not toward me, not toward the door, but toward the rearview mirror. My stomach tightened. I followed her gaze. Two men were walking toward my car from the far end of the lot, one angled toward my side, the other toward hers. My heartbeat spiked. "Who are they?" I whispered. The woman didn't answer. Her face was calm now. Then she said quietly, steadily, "He's already here." Everything clicked at once. She wasn't running from anyone. She had led them to me. The first man reached my door and tried the handle gently, like testing how strong the lock was. The other knocked twice on the passenger window. "Open it," he said. Not to me. To her. She moved her hand toward the unlock button. My brain snapped into gear. "No," I said. But she didn't even look at me. She wasn't scared anymore, wasn't shaking, wasn't crying. She was part of this, but I was wearing my seatbelt. She wasn't. That tiny detail saved my life. The car was parked nose in, but behind me was a wide open stretch of pavement, and none of them were watching my hand. The moment her fingertip grazed the unlock button, I slammed the car into reverse and floored it. The car jerked backward violently. She was thrown sideways, her head cracking against the passenger window with a sickening thud. She went completely limp. The men staggered. One slammed his hands against the trunk as I flew backward. The backup camera showed silhouettes scrambling to get out of the way. I swung out of the space, slammed into drive, and tore out of the lot, tires screaming across the asphalt. I wasn't thinking anymore. My body moved faster than my thoughts, adrenaline doing the work. About a minute down the road, the woman started to groan, waking up. I pulled into the nearest gas station, parked by the door, jumped out, and locked the car from the outside. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the keys. I ran inside and yelled for someone to call the police. The clerk looked at the woman slumped in my passenger seat and grabbed his phone immediately. But by the time police arrived 10 minutes later, she was gone, the passenger door wide open. Gas station security footage showed everything. A black sedan pulled into the far corner of the lot. Two men got out, the same ones from the bar. They dragged her out of my car and sped away. Police later told me it wasn't the first time. A woman matching her description had done this before, luring people to their attackers. They take the car, the driver, the wallet, clean out everything, and disappear without a trace. "Most victims never try to drive away," one officer said. "They underestimate the danger until it's too late." I didn't freeze. and that was the only reason I got away. I still think about her voice, the moment her fear vanished, replaced with something calm. Almost satisfied, and I'll never forget the way she said, "He's already here." She wasn't warning me, she was announcing it.